I'm just filming. I have a right to film. Step back.
Welcome back to the Justice Files. Before we dive into the chilling details of this breakdown, I want to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below right now. As you'll see in a moment, this is a case with massive global fallout, and I want to see how far this community reaches. If you believe in holding power accountable and exposing the truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to see it.
The lobby of the Fontainebleau Miami Beach is the kind of place that makes you feel like money is a language everyone there speaks fluently. Chandeliers drip from vaulted ceilings, marble floors stretch so wide and so white they almost hurt to look at. Families in resort wear drift past check-in desks with the unhurried ease of people who have paid handsomely to forget their problems for a week. Marcus Webb had done exactly that. 34 years old, a logistics coordinator from Atlanta, he had saved 11 months for this trip. 4 nights, ocean view, a birthday gift to himself that he'd told his mother about 3 times because she kept asking when he was finally going to take a real vacation. He was crossing the lobby toward the pool bar, phone already out to text his friend Dre the room number, when the energy in the room shifted. It happened the way things always happen in crowded public spaces, not all at once, but in a ripple. Heads turning, conversations dropping half a decibel. A woman near the concierge desk stepping back without quite knowing why. 2 officers in Navy uniforms moved through the lobby with the kind of purposeful speed that clears a path without asking. They converged near the far end of the check-in counter on a man in khaki shorts and a white shirt who appeared agitated, his voice too loud, his gestures too wide for the room. Whatever had happened before Marcus arrived, it had already escalated past conversation. The officers took the man to the ground fast. One moment he was standing, the next he was face down on that white marble. 2 officers working to control his arms, while bystanders froze in that particular human stillness, the one that happens when your brain hasn't yet decided whether to run or watch. Marcus watched. And then, almost without deciding to, he did what millions of people do every single day in every country on earth with a smartphone in their pocket. He raised it, he pressed record. He wasn't angry, he wasn't trying to make a statement, he wasn't planning a viral moment or a lawsuit or a news cycle. He was a man on vacation who had just witnessed something that looked like it might matter, standing at a distance any reasonable person would call respectful, doing the one thing that felt instinctively correct. He pointed his camera at the truth and let it run. Around him, others had their phones out too. A woman in a floral dress near the elevator bank, a teenage boy with his family by the luggage cart, a hotel employee who thought twice and put his back in his pocket. The arrest itself was drawing a loose semicircle of witnesses, the way these things always do. Not a crowd exactly, but an audience, the kind that gathers not out of entertainment, but out of the unspoken collective understanding that someone probably should be watching this. Marcus kept his distance. He stayed quiet. He made sure the lens was steady. He had no idea that within the next 90 seconds, the officers on that floor would stop what they were doing, turn away from the man in the white shirt, and walk directly toward him. He had no idea that his birthday trip to Miami was about to become something he would spend the next 2 years of his life trying to recover from. He just kept recording. Before we get to what happened next, it's worth pausing, because this is the part that gets lost every single time a story like this surfaces. It gets buried under the outrage and the headlines and the press conferences, and by the time anyone thinks to look for it, the conversation has already moved on. So, let's be precise. In the United States, filming police officers performing their duties in a public space is a constitutionally protected activity. It falls under the First Amendment, It is not a gray area. It is not a technicality. It is settled law, reinforced by federal circuit court decisions across the country, from the First Circuit to the Ninth, from Boston to San Francisco. The right to record is the right to bear witness, and bearing witness to the exercise of government power is as fundamental to American democracy as anything written in that document. Florida, where Marcus Webb was standing that afternoon, is not an exception. It is a one-party consent state, which means you do not need permission from the officers you are filming to film them. You do not need to announce yourself. You do not need a press credential or a journalism degree or a reason beyond the simple fact that you are a citizen and they are public servants operating in public view. The law carries reasonable conditions. You cannot interfere with an active law enforcement operation. You cannot obstruct officers physically. You cannot insert yourself into the situation in a way that creates a genuine safety concern. These are the boundaries, and they are not unreasonable. Marcus Webb met every single one of them. Witnesses who were standing in that lobby, later interviewed, later deposed, placed him consistently at a distance of between 15 and 20 feet from the officers and the man being detained. He said nothing to the officers. He did not move toward them. He did not gesticulate or shout or attempt to communicate with the suspect on the ground. He stood where he stood, phone raised, recording. This is important because the police report that would be filed later that evening would describe a very different person. It would describe someone agitated and aggressive, someone who ignored verbal commands, someone who, in the language officers are trained to use when they need a sentence to hold up in court, posed a threat to officer safety. But that report hadn't been written yet. In that lobby, at that moment, the legal picture was simple. A tourist from Atlanta was exercising a right that courts have repeatedly and explicitly upheld. He was doing what journalists do, what activists do, what ordinary people do every day in a country where the assumption is, still, despite everything, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. He was not committing a crime. He was documenting an area of concern, or what he believed might be one, from a safe and reasonable distance in a space open to the public, in a city that receives millions of tourists each year precisely because it projects the image of a place where people can move freely and feel safe. The irony of what was about to happen to him in that gleaming lobby, under those chandeliers, in front of that marble floor, is almost too on the nose to believe. Almost. But the camera was still running, and the camera does not editorialize. It does not protect itself. It does not know what's coming. It just records. It takes 4 seconds. That is all the footage shows. 4 seconds between the moment one of the officers glances back over his shoulder and the moment everything changes. 4 seconds between a routine, if aggressive, detention and what would become an international incident.
Marble floors stretch so wide and so white, they almost hurt to look at. Families in resort wear drift past check-in desks with the unhurried ease of people who have paid handsomely to forget their problems for a week. Marcus Webb had done exactly that. 34 years old, a logistics coordinator from Atlanta, he had saved 11 months for this trip. 4 nights, ocean view, a birthday gift to himself that he'd told his mother about 3 times because she kept asking when he was finally going to take a real vacation. He was crossing the lobby toward the pool bar, phone already out to text his friend Dre the room number, when the energy in the room shifted. It happened the way things always happen in crowded public spaces, not all at once, but in a ripple. Heads turning, conversations dropping half a decibel, a woman near the concierge desk stepping back without quite knowing why. 2 officers in navy uniforms moved through the lobby with the kind of purposeful speed that clears a path without asking. They converge near the far end of the check-in counter on a man in khaki shorts and a white shirt who appeared agitated, his voice too loud, his gestures too wide for the room. Whatever had happened before Marcus arrived, it had already escalated past conversation. The officers took the man to the ground fast. One moment he was standing, the next he was face down on that white marble. Two officers working to control his arms, while bystanders froze in that particular human stillness, the one that happens when your brain hasn't yet decided whether to run or watch. Marcus watched. And then, almost without deciding to, he did what millions of people do every single day in every country on earth with a smartphone in their pocket. He raised it, he pressed record. He wasn't angry, he wasn't trying to make a statement, he wasn't planning a viral moment or a lawsuit or a news cycle. He was a man on vacation who had just witnessed something that looked like it might matter, standing at a distance any reasonable person would call respectful, doing the one thing that felt instinctively correct. He pointed his camera at the truth and let it run. Around him, others had their phones out too. A woman in a floral dress near the elevator bank, a teenage boy with his family by the luggage cart, a hotel employee who thought twice and put his back in his pocket. The arrest itself was drawing a loose semicircle of witnesses, the way these things always do. Not a crowd exactly, but an audience, the kind that gathers not out of entertainment, but out of the unspoken collective understanding that someone probably should be watching this. Marcus kept his distance. He stayed quiet. He made sure the lens was steady. He had no idea that within the next 90 seconds, the officers on that floor would stop what they were doing, turn away from the man in the white shirt, and walk directly toward him. He had no idea that his birthday trip to Miami was about to become something he would spend the next 2 years of his life trying to recover from. He just kept recording. The officer's eyes find the phone first, then Marcus. Then something shifts in his expression that the camera captures with uncomfortable clarity. Not alarm, not concern, but something closer to decision. He says something to his partner, brief, almost casual, and then both men, without any escalation from the suspect still pinned beneath them, redirect their attention entirely. They leave the man in the white shirt on the floor, and they come for Marcus Webb. The footage, which would later be watched by tens of millions of people across 6 continents, shows Marcus take a step back, then another. His free hand comes up, palm open, the universal human signal for "I am not a threat." His voice, barely audible beneath the ambient noise of the lobby, says something that bystanders would later confirm sounded like, "I'm not doing anything, I'm just recording." It does not matter. The first officer reaches him in 4 strides. There is no verbal warning captured on the recording that meets any legal standard of clarity. There is no instruction to disperse, no identification of a specific violation, no moment where Marcus Webb is given a genuine opportunity to comply with a legitimate order. What the camera shows before it hits the marble floor and spins, still recording, capturing a tilted, dizzying view of chandelier and ceiling, is a man being taken down hard and fast in the lobby of a luxury resort for the crime of holding a phone. The sound is what stays with people. Not the shouting, not the commotion from bystanders. It is the specific sound of Marcus hitting that marble floor, a sound that does not belong in a vacation. Around him, people scream. The woman in the floral dress near the elevator bank covers her mouth. The teenage boy stops recording. A hotel manager appears from somewhere behind the front desk and stands very still, the kind of stillness that says this person is calculating risk in real time. Marcus's phone continues recording from the floor for another 40 seconds. It captures shoes. It captures the edge of a uniform. It captures the sound of Marcus saying he cannot breathe properly, and it captures the sound of that statement being ignored. By the time the handcuffs are on, the original suspect, the man in khaki shorts and the white shirt, the reason the officers were in that lobby to begin with, has been helped to his feet by a third officer who arrived late. He has walked to one side. He is calm now, or tired, or both. Marcus Webb, who committed no crime, who crossed no legal line, who did everything the law permits and nothing it forbids, is led out of the Fontainebleau Miami Beach in handcuffs past a lobby full of tourists who came to Miami to forget their problems. 3 people in that lobby never stopped recording. There is a specific kind of fear that has nothing to do with physical danger. It is quieter than that. It settles somewhere behind the sternum, and it does not announce itself dramatically. It just sits there, heavy and cold, while the world continues moving around you at a pace you can no longer match. Marcus Webb felt it the moment the patrol car door closed. He had never been arrested before. He did not know the name of a single attorney in Miami. He did not know which precinct he was being taken to, or what the booking process looked like, or how long it would be before he could make a call. He knew his hotel room was paid for through Sunday. He knew his return flight was Monday morning. He knew his mother would call at 7 o'clock that evening the way she always did when he traveled, and he had no idea what he was going to tell her. The press release came out at 9:15 the following morning. It was 3 paragraphs long, written in the careful, passive-voiced language that police communications departments have refined over decades into something that technically says very little while appearing to say a great deal. It described an incident in which officers responding to a disturbance at a Miami Beach resort encountered a secondary individual who, quote, repeatedly refused to comply with lawful instructions and physically impeded officers in the performance of their duties, unquote. It noted that the individual was taken into custody without serious injury. It referenced the charges, resisting without violence, obstruction, and concluded with a statement expressing the department's commitment to professional, constitutional policing and community safety. What it did not mention was the phone. It did not mention that the individual being described had been recording. It did not mention the distance at which he was standing. It did not mention that the footage existed, that it was on a phone currently sitting in an evidence locker, that 3 other people in that same lobby captured the same moment from different angles. The language about physically impeding officers would later become a focal point for Marcus's legal team, because impede has a specific meaning. It implies action, deliberate physical action that creates an obstacle to law enforcement activity. Backing away with your hands up holding a phone is not, by any legal or common sense definition, impediment. The language about repeatedly refusing to comply with lawful instructions raised its own questions. Repeatedly implies multiple commands over a sustained period. The footage, all 4 angles of it, does not support a timeline in which Marcus Webb was given multiple clear opportunities to respond to specific, audible, lawful instructions before being taken down. But press releases are not cross-examined. They are published, picked up by local news desks who are busy and understaffed, and repeated with the credibility that official sources still carry in the first news cycle. By mid-morning, 2 local Miami outlets had run brief articles describing an arrest at the Fontainebleau in which a tourist had been taken into custody for interfering with police. The items were short. They cited the department. They included the charges. They did not include the footage. That was about to change. The upload happened at 6:43 in the morning, before the press release, before the local news items, before any official narrative had been established. It came from a Snapchat account belonging to a 22-year-old hospitality student from Colombia who had been standing near the elevator bank when everything happened. He had posted the clips to his story overnight, without much caption beyond a string of shocked emojis and the location tag for the hotel. By 8 a.m., the clips had been screenshotted and reposted to X. By 9 a.m., a longer compilation, someone had stitched together 3 of the 4 angles captured in that lobby, had been uploaded to YouTube with the title "Tourist Arrested for Filming Police at Miami Beach Resort," and was accumulating views at a rate the uploader would later describe as watching a counter break. The internet, when it decides something matters, is not subtle about it.
Within hours, frame-by-frame analyses were appearing in comment threads and then in dedicated posts. People with no legal training and considerable determination were time-stamping the footage, mapping Marcus's position relative to the officers, highlighting the moment the first officer's gaze found the phone. Someone created a side-by-side comparison of the police report's language against the corresponding footage. It was methodical. It was damning. It was shared 400,000 times before sundown. The specific detail that seemed to crystallize public anger, that kept reappearing in shares and quote posts and news chyrons, was the moment Marcus's palm goes up. Open hand, fingers spread, body angled back. Every person who watched that clip recognized it immediately because it is the most legible human gesture there is. It means the same thing in every language, in every culture, on every continent. It means, I am not a threat. What happens in the next 4 seconds of footage is what happens in the next 4 seconds of footage. The camera does not editorialize. The camera does not protect itself. It just records. By the 3rd day, it was no longer a Miami story. The BBC ran it. Le Monde ran it. The Guardian ran a 1,200-word piece under the headline, "Smile, You're in America. Tourist arrested for filming police at luxury resort." A Brazilian news network led their evening broadcast with the footage. A German tabloid put a screenshot from the video on its front page beside a headline that translated roughly to, "Is America safe for tourists?" That question, more than any single headline, more than any individual broadcast, was the one that made officials nervous. Miami's economy is not incidentally dependent on tourism. It is structurally, fundamentally, existentially dependent on it. The city receives tens of millions of visitors each year. Tourism generates billions in revenue and supports hundreds of thousands of jobs. The image of Miami, warm, glamorous, safe, aspirational, is not just a marketing position. It is the city's primary economic product. And now that image had a crack in it that was visible from space. Travel forums lit up with threads from people asking whether they should cancel planned trips. A UK-based travel company quietly issued guidance to clients, noting ongoing developments regarding tourist rights in Florida. The State Department of a Scandinavian country, declining to be named in early reports but later confirmed, made informal inquiries through diplomatic channels about the protections afforded to foreign nationals filming in public spaces in Florida. The mayor's office issued a statement. It was measured and carefully worded and satisfied essentially no one. The police union issued a counter-statement supporting the officers involved. It was less measured and satisfied a different set of people, but not a larger one. Marcus Webb, who by this point retained a legal team and been advised to limit his public statements, gave one brief interview from Atlanta, he had gone home, in which he said only that he went to Miami for his birthday and that he hoped what happened to him would not happen to anyone else. That clip of that interview was watched 11 million times in 48 hours. The law firm that took Marcus Webb's case was not a small operation. Benjamin Carter and Associates had offices in Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and New York, and had successfully litigated civil rights cases against municipal police departments in 4 states. They took the case within 72 hours of the video going viral, which is to say, they took it before most people had finished watching it, because experienced civil rights attorneys understood what the footage showed and what it meant in dollar terms before the public finishes forming an emotional opinion.
The civil lawsuit filed in federal court 6 weeks later was thorough. It named the two primary officers by name. It named the department. It named the city. It alleged violations of Marcus Webb's First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights. It included sworn affidavits from 7 witnesses who had been in that lobby. It included a forensic video analysis conducted by a former FBI imaging specialist that mapped Marcus's position, movement, and body language across all 4 angles of footage with the kind of precision that does not leave much room for interpretation. The figure attached to the complaint was $10 million. That number is not arbitrary. Civil rights attorneys set damages at figures that reflect not just individual suffering, but institutional cost. The cost to a city of allowing its officers to operate without accountability. The cost calculated precisely to make reform cheaper than continued litigation. $14.5 million is the kind of number that hurts. It is the kind of number that appears in budget meetings and city council sessions and mayoral re-election calculations. It is, deliberately and explicitly, the kind of number that is meant to hurt. The criminal charges against Marcus Webb were dropped 5 weeks after his arrest, after the state attorney's office reviewed the footage and determined that the evidence did not support prosecution. The announcement was made in a 2-sentence statement that included no apology and no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Marcus's attorneys noted the dropped charges publicly and called them insufficient. They were not wrong. The demand for criminal charges against the officers and for their termination remained active. The police union remained opposed. The department remained under federal scrutiny. The case remained open. The meter was running. Here is what the footage actually is, not metaphorically, literally, physically, functionally. It is light hitting a sensor. It is data written to a chip. It is a file with a timestamp and a geotag and a resolution measured in pixels. It is, in the most reductive possible sense, a technology product sitting in a glass and aluminum rectangle that most people carry in their pocket to check the weather and argue with strangers. And it is the most powerful accountability tool in human history. Not because it is new. People have been filming police encounters since the first consumer camcorders made it possible, but because of what has changed around it. The infrastructure, the speed, the reach, the fact that a 22-year-old hospitality student posting to his Snapchat story at 6 in the morning can by the following afternoon have placed the same image simultaneously in front of a retired school teacher in Manchester, a law student in Lagos, a diplomat in Stockholm, and a city budget analyst in Miami who is quietly doing the math on $14.5 million. The officers in that lobby made a calculation. It was the wrong one, and it was wrong in a way that is worth understanding clearly. They did not fail to account for the phone. They saw the phone. They made a decision about the phone. What they failed to account for was everything the phone was connected to, every server, every platform, every pair of eyes that would open that footage and recognize in 4 seconds of video something true about power and about accountability and about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you decide that documentation is the threat. Marcus Webb went to Miami for his birthday. He left with a criminal record that was later expunged, a lawsuit that was later settled, and a story that will follow him in search results for the rest of his life. He also left with something else, something the officers did not intend to give him and cannot take back. He left as evidence. The record button is not radical. It is not aggressive. It is not a provocation or a political statement or an act of war against law enforcement. It is a right. It is a tool. And in the hands of ordinary people living ordinary lives in places where power occasionally forgets that it is being watched, it is the difference between a version of events that goes unchallenged and a version of events that gets seen by 11 million people before breakfast. Keep recording. Keep the footage. Know your rights and stand in them the way Marcus Webb stood in that lobby, calmly, legally, at a safe distance, because the truth, when it exists on video, has a way of surviving everything that tries to bury it. Even marble floors, even handcuffs, even a press release written at 9:15 in the morning by people who hadn't seen all 4 angles.